I just hung out with her 3 months ago. Okay, let me not lie. Jesus would not lie.
Dear God, it's heaven on earth, heaven on earth, heaven on earth.
Hello, welcome to the video. I am so excited that you're here. I'm Dahlia and I am a serious introvert. I'm guessing you might be an introvert, and if you're an extrovert, that's okay too. Let's talk about it. And we're gonna pull out some Bible verses and we're gonna talk, okay? As usual, I have my handy dandy iPad with my verses and my outline. I'm gonna be looking this way at some point. Let's get started. Alright. On my channel, I briefly spoke about how last year I was an avid online church person. I watched church every Sunday. Shout out to Transformation Church because y'all have been monumental to my faith journey. At some point, God was like, hey, I want you to try to find a physical home church. I eventually, as you guys know, I do have a home church now, a physical home church that I love and I adore. But I wouldn't have found it on my own accord. If God never told me to, I personally would have never ever stepped outside on my own accord. I already told y'all worship was awkward for me. It's still kind of awkward for me. I don't need to be doing all of that in front of people. If God never told me to do it, I myself would have never done it. In that same light though, I realized that if I wanted to be used by God and spread God's message as an introvert, there had to be a moment where I gave up something, right? And this occurred to me because the pastor of Journey Church had mentioned this. He was talking about how Christianity is based off of selflessness. Bam, selflessness. And truthfully, I was like, oh wow, that's crazy. He's right, because God gave his only son so that we could have eternal life, right? And in that, we give Jesus our life. And in giving Jesus our life, we have to give up our preferences sometimes. So yes, I might prefer to be in my living room and want to be alone. And if God tells me I need to go be in a physical home church, I have to give up that preference. Just keep that at the forefront of your memory. We believe in a selfless God, and because he gave his only son, we have to give to, which means giving up our preferences. There's biblical characters that we've seen that exhibit traits of introverts. I don't know if they're fully, I don't know them, you know, but they exhibit introverted tendencies. And so we'll talk about them and talk about that, giving up that preference. Y'all know we're gonna talk about Moses. Exodus 4 verse 10 all the way to 12. But Moses said, no, Lord, don't send me. I have never been a good speaker, and I haven't become one since you began to speak to me. I am a poor speaker, slow and hesitant. The Lord said to him, who gives man his mouth? And who makes him deaf or dumb? Who gives him sight, or who makes him blind? It is I, the Lord. Now go, and I will be with you and tell you what you will say. Essentially, God knows you're an introvert. God knows you have a stutter. God knows this. God knows that. He gave it to you. Duh. But God, I'm an introvert. And he's like, I know you're an introvert. I gave you that. I made you an introvert. He already knows. That trait that we possess is not meant to deter us from our assignment. It's meant to kind of shape our approach to the assignment. We have to play it up to our strengths, right? It's not meant to be used as the excuse or the main reason why you can't. As we see Moses do, he's like, I'm not a good speaker. I know you're, God said, I'll tell you what to say. We all know Moses. Moses was a phenomenal leader. He interceded on the behalf of the Israelites multiple times, as Jesus does for us right now. Yet he had to do all of those things, be a great leader and intercede on behalf of the Israelites as Moses. He had to grow in his faith, grow in his belief in God and knowing God and in his faith. But he himself did not have to walk into this facade of an extrovert, or if he wasn't an introvert, then that's fine. But yeah, hopefully you get what I mean. He didn't have to do that. He did it in Moses's way, right? He was a great leader as Moses. And that's how I think God really intends for us to be. Who you are wonderfully and fearfully made, but are you willing? And I think it gets down to that. We're gonna read some verses. Psalm 139:13, verse 14. For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. Your soul knows it very well. You are made exactly how you're supposed to be. And even then, God is still giving you the assignment that he's giving you. Ain't that crazy? God knows you're an introvert, but he's telling you to go talk to that person. God knows you're an introvert, but he's still calling you to go outside and socialize when you don't want to socialize. And I get it. Are you willing? Your introversion shouldn't deter you from doing what God needs you to do. Your willingness will. Yeah, you guys know this YouTube channel is it's severely uncomfortable for me. But in that, so like this is God's ministry that he's using me for. But me being an introvert, I can deal with that later. I can tend to that later. I can tend to me needing to recharge later. But when it comes to that moment when I need to spread God's message and talk to his people and tend to his sheep or inspire his sheep or empower his sheep, me being an introvert does not matter. God's glory shows in the despite, in the regardless, even though I don't want to. It is more than me. Like, it's bigger than me. God is bigger than me being an introvert. Moses, we see, would have preferred God to use somebody else, right? He's like, God, use anybody else but me. But God uses him anyways. You know, hey, that's our God. And as an introvert, we have those moments a lot. Like, why me? I don't want to go talk to them. I want to be by myself. I don't want to do that. We don't want to socialize, but sometimes we have to. We prefer to be away from the crowd, but sometimes we have to. Like me with church. Like, I didn't want to go to church physically because people, crowds, ugh. We like to be alone. But sometimes God requires us not to be alone. Can you imagine if Adam was like, God, I don't need a person. I don't know how procreation would work. Y'all get the point. That's pretty much what it's like being an introvert, right? We have to give up our preferences just a little bit more, whereas an extrovert, I feel like, would be a little bit more open to those social settings. So I think it's just a matter of like understanding that selflessness is because God was selfless to us first. He gave, so we give our life, and in giving our life, we have to give up our preferences sometimes. And it might feel like it's a little more than it is for the other side of the spectrum, like the extroverts. And that's okay. God honors that. God like sees that, you know? God appreciates that. He delights in that. So Moses becomes a great man of God, and we can look at his story to understand that God's got us. For one, regardless of if you're introvert or not, you can't speak or not, you can't see or not, you can't do whatever you think you can't do. God's got us, introvert or not. He will never leave us. He will never forsake us. And that's that. And Moses' story is like a testimony to this. As an introvert, he will not let you back down from an assignment. Are you willing? Yes, you're an introvert. Are you willing? Are you willing to be uncomfortable? Are you willing to let me give me your preferences so I can move you into a different place of your faith, a deeper point to your character development? Are you willing? And I think, again, like that's how God uses us. As an introvert, those uncomfortable moments, I feel like God really uses that to grow us and our faith and dependence on him and just our character development. All right, so we see Moses in asking for God to send somebody else. God gives him somebody else, and that's his brother Aaron, and Aaron becomes the speaker for Moses. Moses is still technically the leader. So we have this duo, this team, right? We have the talker and we have the leader. And they become this team that leads Israel out of Egypt, out of slavery. God creates this combination of the person who prefers to be behind the scenes and the person who's okay with being out in the front. Both of them are equal. They are equally important in God's plan in the kingdom. I got a really long Bible verse. Y'all probably already know the Bible verse that I'm about to get into. 1 Corinthians 12, verse 12 to 27. For as the body is one and has many members, but all the members of that one body, being many, are one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit we are all baptized into one body, whether Jews or Greeks, whether slaves or free, and have all been made to drink into one Spirit. For in fact that the body is not one member, but many. If one foot should say, because I am not a hand, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? And if the ear should say, because I am not an ear, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? If the whole body were an eye, where would be the hearing? If the whole were hearing, where would be the smelling? But now God has set the members, each one of them, in the body just as he pleased. And if they were all one member, where would the body be? But now, indeed, there are many members, yet one body. And the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. No, much rather, those members of the body which seem to be weaker are necessary. And those members of the body which we think are to be less honorable, on these we will bestow greater honor. And our unpresentable parts have greater modesty, but our presentable parts have no need. But God composed the body, having given greater honor to that part which lacks it, that there should be no schism in the body, but that the members should have the same care for one another. And if one member suffers, all the members suffers with it. And if one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. Now you are the body, and members individually. Judges 6, Gideon's story. Essentially, God calls on him, tells him to fight the Midianites. And Gideon tells him, like, how can I deliver them? My family is the weakest and I am the youngest. And as y'all know, that verse, that 1 Corinthians 12 verse that we read, speaks about how just because it's not seen doesn't mean it's the weakest. Gideon, of course, has his insecurity because coming from the smallest and the weakest part in Manasseh. But God used him anyways. And he had an army of 300 and defeated the Midianites, and it was crazy because I don't even think they had weapons, if I recall correctly. God is super, super intentional with the trait that he's given us. And he uses introverts, he uses extroverts. It doesn't matter. He uses it, he uses us. That's it. Again, it just may look different. Like, again, we have to give up our preferences a little bit more, and that's okay. Extroverts, I assume, probably have to sacrifice something. I'm praying, I hope, God, just to make it fair. Your ministry as an introvert, and when I say ministry, that's like how you're spreading the gospel, whether it's by your one-on-one conversations. You don't have to speak to a whole congregation. You can minister to your best friend or your siblings, the person who bumped into you in the store and now you're having a conversation with them. That is your ministry. Or however your passion shows up and presents itself to the world and you implement God into it, that is your ministry. Seeing whether you dance, whether you make YouTube videos and content create, whatever it is, that is your ministry. And it should still feel like you. Like, you shouldn't, as the verse said, you can't be an I and be upset about like not being able to hear. Like, you are an I, function as an I, be who you are, because you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Okay, your traits are your traits on purpose. God is super intentional and he gave you it for a reason. Jeremiah 1 verse 5, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet to the nations. That verse is so beautiful. Like, I knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. I knew you were an introvert. I made you an introvert, and I still appointed you to spread my good news. So, there's the question. How can God use me? And how will God use me? I wish I could give you all the answers, and I'm still figuring this out as I go as well. But y'all know we got the internet, so I did some research. We did some research. Be willing, and don't quit on yourself. As long as you are okay with being just a little bit uncomfortable, understand God knows. God knows you're an introvert. He already knows. And he's still calling you to do something, right? God knows you would much rather be by yourself, and he still called you. So you have to be willing to give up your preference and to spread the good news. And remember, like, you being an introvert or an extrovert is a good thing. You being you is a good thing. God crafted you as you, and he knows what he's doing. He's very intentional. Talk to him about it, you know. Second thing, find your praise in your post and your in between. I wrote, be alone first and before and even between where you need to, right? Sometimes social gatherings and crowds can be super overwhelming because it's like people is everywhere, and you don't, like, you need a break. You need like a people break. Pray and spend time with God before the gathering, and, you know, recoup and recharge before the gathering. You know yourself. So if you need 3 days to prepare for a social event, take your 3 days to prepare for a social event. And then after the fact, take your recharge time so that when you get to your assignment, you are ready to fully be there. So with this point, we see that Jesus retreated and withdrew a lot. When he was, you know, the people tried to crown him king, he retreated. He was like, attention, acknowledgement, gotta go. So John 6 verse 15, Jesus withdraws to a mountain by himself after feeding thousands of people, knowing that some intend to make him king by force. He retreated when he needed to. Like, literally honor who you are and the trait that God gave you, because it's not a bad thing. If you need to recharge and be away from people, you recharge and be away from people, okay? But when God needs you to talk to people, you better be ready to talk to people, okay? So you might feel like you can't enter the presence of God because there's like so many people around you, so it kind of like disrupts that intimacy. You know, we kind of appreciate that one-on-one time with God. And so I read this blog, I think it's a blog, and I'm gonna link it down below. He wrote that he like spends 30 minutes before church like reading his Bible and praying and worshiping, because that's his one-on-one time with God. He has trouble entering the presence of God, or like feeling the presence of God, because of the church atmosphere, like all the people and things. And like, that's okay, God's not mad at that. Honor that, know that, and adjust because of that. So give yourself that extra 30 minutes before church where you get that one-on-one time. Take your alone time like seriously. That's a whole nother point. 3, take your alone time very, very seriously, because we need it. That's the only way we can function for real, okay? So take your alone time seriously so that God can use you. It's another thing with just stewarding your time. If you know you need 3 days to prepare for a social gathering or a social event, take your 3 days. You can steward your time well, steward your energy well, so that you can be ready for that event and your assignment, okay? Tackle things with another person so that you are not alone. When I went church shopping, you guys, I did not go by myself. Yeah, like I'm so thankful I didn't go by myself, because I could have seen a good church, but regardless of it being a good church or not the church for me, I would have been blocked by me feeling like isolated, or me not knowing anybody, or me not wanting to be there because there's so many people and I don't know these people and everybody's asking me how I am and they don't know me, like, you know? So go with somebody, find somebody that you know who might be a little bit more extroverted, or another fellow introvert, so that when you go into these places that make you like, you know, usually go like this, you have a means to kind of help block that barrier that's about to happen. My last thing, serve people in your church in the way that you want to. You know you don't like to perform in front of people. Well, now there's an exception here. If God tells you to, go ahead, absolutely do it. But if like it is not God's will for you, if he don't tell you to do it, but you were like, yeah, let me go sing on stage, let me join worship, even though like I like absolutely get paralyzed. And you know, that's not to say like don't work on things, but like if it's not your place, like don't try to function in the church at a place like, again, that's an ear trying to be an eye, or the eye trying to be the mouth. Find a way you can serve that still honors you, but it can also still push you, right? The body needs you and your talent, and that's that. Like, again, so just like honor who you are, and do that. A lot of introverts, we like to thrive in those smaller gatherings and those one-on-one conversations. So maybe you can mentor one-on-one, you can pray in the background for people, intercede on their behalf like Moses did, things like that. You can serve in ways that still honor you as an introvert, and operate in the church body without like feeling like too uncomfortable. God knows. Give it to him and keep pushing. Honor your tendency. Honor the tendencies of who you are, though. That's it. You guys know I don't do the goodbyes too well, the same way I don't do the hellos too well. So I'm gonna close out this video, but thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.